You're locked into Integrate, a podcast from Insert. Jack, Alex, and myself, Cass, will be delving into new developments in club culture and bringing you closer to the opinions and mindsets of creators in the scene. In this episode, Akito dissects productions he'd love to have made in Track Envy.
When I got the list, I was like, wow, like, what do you get from that?
I'm just obsessed with Frank Ocean, I think. I wish I could sing, that's one thing. And if I could sing, then I'd probably sound like Frank Ocean.
Later, the Senscapes collective explain how they're using data from brain scans to make immersive art.
We wanted to put people in the middle of something that was completely immersive. People were sitting in the middle of this all-encompassing experience that tried to mimic that same emotional journey that someone might have gone through while taking psilocybin, using the data itself.
But first, two producers linked through record label Goon Club All Stars trade notes on production techniques, the blurring of genres, and how they met label owner Moleskine. They've never met before this recording. This is KG and Gundam in conversation.
My name is Karen. I'm also known as KG, so I'm a broadcaster, music producer and DJ. The label that I'm affiliated with is Goon Club All Stars. However, I'm not signed to them. They're more or less my booking agents when it comes to DJing gigs. So, the DJing stuff's sort of taken off this year, but I have been producing for about over 10 years.
My name's Tom, also known as Gundam. Goon Club gave me my first vinyl release, I believe, or is it second? I think it might have been the second. I think Foundation might be my first. But basically, Moleskine did a lot to help me originally. Felix. Shout out to Felix.
Shout out to Felix.
Mainly, I guess, create bootlegs and edits, but also the kind of RNG, Wi-Fi related instrumentals, which is kind of what I'm known for at the moment. What do I do outside of music? I'm a broadcast support engineer, so I work in the televisions.
Would you say music's like more or less a side hustle or like a second career?
Side hustle. It's always been a hobby, and it still is a hobby that I just happen to like seem to do a lot more of now.
Dip into, yeah. Gosh, your day job's better than mine. I'm in bloody security.
Oh, that sounds all right.
But it's like a 4-on, 4-off shift rota. So with the 4 days off, I get to run rampant in the creative industry.
Yeah, that's what mine's like. So I work on so you do like 12-hour shifts.
Yeah, 12-hour shifts,
You do night shifts as well.
Exactly, yeah. Just rolling.
Yeah. So then it's like, I do like 2 weeks a month. So you get like, I'm currently on like 7 days off.
Okay.
And then I'll do like 3 nights, 3 days off, 2 days, 2 days off. Just it's on that rota pattern basically.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
But yeah, it's good. The nights can be a bit savage, but
nights are just.
But in terms of working for music and stuff, it's
I was going to say
lots of time off to.
You can actually dedicate a segment of your life to doing what you love.
I think if you're doing 9 to 5, you find that like you might have like the evening, but it's like you can only spend a couple of hours and then you're just done.
Idealistically, people assume that after your 9 to 5, you could work. You've got until midnight to work on your dreams. I want to sleep. I want to sleep. I'm drained.
I go to bed at like 10. Yeah, that's it. I'd rather just do it at like 8 a.m. Make a tune, bang it out, done.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's 12 midnight. Well, I got like 5 hours of real good sleep before I get back into the city again. So that's so interesting. That's so dope. See, how long have you known Moleskine for? How was that? How did you connect to Goon Club?
I was thinking about this one. So I'm not sure. I can't remember where I met him. It was either when I went and did Rinse with him and Missigno and did their show and did a guest mix on that.
Sick.
Or I'd met him previously. I'd definitely been speaking to him online.
Yeah.
And then like just sending him tunes and bits and bobs. But I can't remember if it was I met him at a party or if the first time I met him was when he invited me to Rinse. I can't remember.
Okay, but, yeah.
I
was thinking about that on the way here as well. It's just like, when did I actually connect with Moleskine? Because I mean, they were aware of my music. Like, I've been producing, I'd say I surfaced onto like the UK funky scene like predominantly 2008, 2009. So the guys were aware of me, but I wasn't aware of them until I'm sure like the ending or the cusp of 2015 into 2016 when they approached me. I think, Felix messaged me on Twitter and was just like, you know, we want to hook up, we want to re-release 808, So yeah, like literally everything has kicked off. I've known about the EP release for about a year and a bit. The guys have been working behind the scenes. I'm just like, finally, my time's arrived.
I think with mine as well was I wasn't expecting it in any way. Like they just released obviously the Masigno album, and I was just like, this is not going to be the material that they're going to want to release anyway. I was like, what? What? Yeah. And then like as he was going through it and talking about like how they approach with the label, it's like finding artists that they're really into. It doesn't really matter what the genre is. It's kind of all encompassed in the kind of underground and club music basically.
It's so authentic. I just love the way that they, because that's the thing. It's just like I said to Felix, oh my God, you're going to revive my career. I somehow retired. Funky died. Like it was so gone.
Oh, right, okay.
And you know, it gets to the point where you have like mediocre songs made out of such a raw, unrefined genre. So at that point, I was uninspired. So I stopped making music for years until Felix hit me up in the DMs, just say, yo, KG, man, you got da, 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 da. So I was like, oh yeah. And now I'm just back on it. Like, yeah, thanks to him, to be honest. So I like their selection process. They really do believe in the art, I'd say. It's not really about they know how to source those hidden gems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you reckon that Funky just completely died?
That's more or less. Well, okay, maybe people could say that's relatively subjective, but I'm sure there are some other prominent producers that were, you know, really flourishing at the time that believed that. Because there was just, I kind of go with moods, and there was just a certain period of time when I was in university where UK funky was just thriving. Bassline was popping off in Birmingham.
Yeah.
I think the East and West Midlands, it was bassline and UK funky, but there was just this really pure sound that was just, the raves were going nuts. It just sounded so good. You can tell like when the quality kind of dips. So I don't know, maybe amongst my peers, or I just felt like, oh, like there's just nothing to really, what guidelines do we go by? I didn't have producers as point of reference. We had like Hard House Banton, who I thought was sick. DJ Perempe, all these dope producers. Deneo was doing his thing. He's still pretty much doing his thing. I think he's still unrefined in that sense, but that time he was killing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it just all went a bit. I don't know. I just wasn't inspired by the dip.
Fair. I think it got to a point where a lot of people suddenly jumped on, like everyone is with kind of grime and stuff at the moment.
Yeah,
and they're just making sort of like mediocre. Slap the UK funky drum pattern in, and it's like, it's just, right, okay, whatever.
I would just get an MC to just talk nonsense over it.
I'd say it's slightly coming back. I don't know. I'm fine. I'm playing it more. I'm getting sent a lot more UK funky stuff.
But it's a different. I find that definitely. Now we have remnants of UK funky, but even maybe in like Afro beats, and then
definitely.
I've only I've maybe like, I think it's called hard drum or something like that, which like we've got spin-offs, like subcategories of UK funky, which to me is exciting because it's just a new lease of life on something that I thought had died.
Yeah, definitely.
So then as a producer, for me, like I can then experiment more with like, you know, textures, sounds, and it's not as glossy as it was before. It's a bit more harder, but still, it's still dope because it's just like, it's not corny.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. I think it's coming out of that kind of people that were doing like When and everyone like that. It's that kind of like 130 dark stuff, but everyone's putting the tribal drums on it now, and it's getting a bit more back into funky.
Heavy, it's getting back into.
So there's a few of those, and then it's like the tropical ones as well.
Exactly, the tropical melodic ones. I think it's definitely a nice balance.
Yeah.
We tend to hop though. I don't know if that's a UK thing. We tend to genre hop because even after UK funky, I swear it was like dubstep.
No. Well, that's the thing at the moment. Obviously, grime's kind of in the limelight.
Grime's like it's at the forefront.
Do you reckon UK funky will kind of? I could almost see it coming over, but I think grime's still on the.
Oh God, if that happens,
the top platform.
I
know it'd be great. But like, or do you reckon it will stay in its kind of own lane? Like, you know how garage is just, it's there, but it's always just there in the background. Like, you can dip in and out, and it's always like, oh, garage, you're there, always
There's
for me.
There's an undertone.
But like, and it's never like, it's just there and there's bangers for a minute and then it's gone. It's like there's a constant platform for decent garage kind of thing.
I think, because then I thought UK funky wasn't going to be one of those genres like UKG or just classic house that would be the undertone for like forever. Or part of the UK fabric, sound fabric. I think it's more of a hybrid. If UK funky could maybe go down an even more darker route, we could maybe touch grime in some aspects. So I guess as a producer, you kind of have to evolve with the times. But would you say that? I mean, would you compromise your sound?
I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be bothered about it moving outside of the limelight because I just make what I want to make. Really,
yeah.
like,
You just make how you feel. Yeah, like, that's dope. You're not even in a box at all.
I mean, I'd say some of my stuff's obviously you can put it in a box, but you can put everything in a box. But I think in terms of for DJing at the moment, all of the stuff's kind of coming together. Like you're not just playing one specific set thing. It's like
exactly.
You can crack out like kudro, funky, dubstep,
even
grime,
trap
everything, and you can just throw it all in. Like some R&B stuff's being made at 140 now, and you can just like throw in the instrumentals, and it's like it sounds great with like wifey tunes and stuff like that. So
it actually makes it more, you have more room to play in terms of definitely. I don't really feel as restricted as I was before, even though I enjoyed it at the time making more so melodic UK funky, but now there's like more room to sort of explore like genre wise.
It means that everyone's not playing the same sets as well.
Exactly. Everyone's got their own style now. Well, kind of, sort of. I mean, culturally, I think both of our genres kind of lead with percussion and drums more so, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you said the wifey type stuff. I mean, people know me for like my melodies. So, and obviously now there's more of like an African spin on the house sort of tribal UK funky that I do right now. I don't know, like, what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, just generally coming from a DJ position as well.
Yeah.
Like, again, I hadn't heard of you until the Goon Club, and then the promo came into my inbox, and I was like, "This bangs." So I've been playing it. Yeah, exactly. I've been playing it for like a while now, and it's like midnight still in my sets.
Don't.
But again, it's like I think with the help of the technology as well. Like obviously, used to be on turntables. But moving on to CDJs now, you can move a lot of stuff that's 130 up to 140.
Yeah.
And it still sounds all right.
And
like,
it still sounds great.
Yeah, there's some exceptions, but like if you can get away with it, then it's like, why not? So like, I try and just play everything within it's like outside of the range within 140. And
it goes back to what you said about the link between like the timbres and the moods. You can pretty much package everything together, even if they are completely different genres. Technology's allowed us to sort of merge tempos together, which I think is amazing. I think that's pretty dope. I think that's what I do, and that's probably what you do as well.
100's the other side of stuff that's popping at the moment, like 100 BPM stuff.
Yeah. I'm literally trying to I'm building my track list of like 100 to 110 BPM tracks that are pretty then. Like I think like reggaeton, a few trap sounds as well, slower trap joints.
That's it. Yeah.
I like DJing, and to be honest, I don't know why I didn't even. What took me so long? You know?
I mean, I think it is a standpoint where like you can't just be a producer unless you're like absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand, isn't it? Because if I didn't take DJing seriously, then I probably wouldn't have got as much exposure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been reintroduced to this generation as much as I have been.
Yeah, definitely.
If, it just goes hand in hand. I can't really depend on production alone as I did before. It's just a different musical climate that we're in right now. Felix was like, last year, December, we were talking and he was like, okay, KG EP is going to be released. January, it's going to be Go 2018. So I was like, dope. He's like, yeah, first DJ set is going to be on Rinse. I was like, what? I was like, can you just warm me up a little bit, please? He's like, yeah, if you're going to go and Rinse, that will be your first guest mix. So I was just like, whoa. But it helped so much. Yeah, this year's been so fun, but it's because of the DJing aspect. You've been doing both, basically, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I originally just didn't even produce at all. I had a pair of decks when I was like 15, then I was just playing with drum and bass
Connoisseur.
mostly. Yeah, and then slowly like got into making and recording mixes, and then it was like, oh, I'll try and make some tunes, and it was obviously horrible to begin with, and then slowly just sort of built up, and I was making like terrible hip hop tunes.
Were you chopping up loops and stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that's how you start, isn't it? Messing about.
Yeah, exactly. And then like obviously because that can obviously be applied to grime, I was like, there's a lot of like editing and refixes in this genre. I was like, I'll have a go at this, because it's like then I can play it with dubstep and stuff, which I was playing at that time as a DJ.
So then you'd probably do like the sickest personalized sets, because you'd have your own refixed versions of certain tracks. And...
Well, yeah, at the time obviously it was when the 10 people that turned up, they got to hear the edit, and it was wonderful. But apart from that,
all 10 of them.
That's it.
A lot of people say to me, it's more known for DJs that don't produce to start producing later on. So everyone assumed that I could DJ. Like, I've blagged DJing for so long without actually touching decks until this
That's good.
year.
Well played.
So yeah, I think I deserve a bit of a pat on the back for that, to be honest. I don't know how I've gotten away with it. The reason why I wish I would have started earlier, because I have been called out for gigs like in Amsterdam and thought, oh gosh, if I'd started then, I'd maybe be at some point.
Oh no, you just got to do it. Just got to go, yep, I'll do it.
Yeah,
and then
that's it. Because I didn't turn down the rinse thing. I wanted to run away. I wanted to leave the country when Felix said rinse, because rinse is a hard crowd to please. But I thought, you know what? Okay. I was like, yep, I'll do it. And I thought, oh God.
You just got to wing it. That's the way.
Oh, Clangerstan.
So when I was doing the guest mix for them, I didn't have CDJs or anything at that point, so I couldn't use them in any way.
Oh,
so I went with like my control, like needles and vinyl, and was using Tractor, and one of the pitch things was broken. So I had all these like really intense blends, and I was like, I can't do half these. So I was like clanging and like trying to adjust, and it was horrible. And that was like, I was literally just sweating out. I was like, furiously.
It's like a painful, slow death, isn't it? It's like, I can't save this. That's it.
Trying not like my hardest.
I have to go into vinyl just for bragging rights. I just want to be that. You want to get into my 50s. I just want to be that grandma that's just working the vinyls. It's like I've worked my way through technology, and now I'm just a don at the art, so no one can say nothing about my DJing skills. I would say that I'm practicing day by day anyway. Felix always says like you're DJing now. It's just like, but am I? I wouldn't quite go there yet, so I need to collect my brownie points. But yeah, I do enjoy it. It's fun. The best thing to do really when you are doing your sets is just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What about dream collaborations?
My dream collaborations are so far outside of the music that I actually play and make.
So it's not like, Champion and Terra and them guys. Yeah.
I would love to like sit in a studio with like Fuzzy Logic and all that. But I mean, my ultimate dream, just to be in a studio with like Timbaland and Pharrell and Darkchild and Just Blaze, Swiss Beats. Even the way that they structure their drum patterns, they've had like a massive sort of, they've influenced the way that I produce percussively. I mean, I do play a bit of the piano, a bit of the guitar, but I fluently play drums. So everything's just drums for me.
Sweet.
Yeah, from like rhythmic patterns.
Just go in and be like, right, you guys can just record all the sample packs for me, and I'll go and take the leads.
I've put them in my suitcase. Goodbye.
That's it.
Yeah, how about you? Dream collabs.
I'd probably say the same thing. I was just like, obviously because just like listening to R&B and stuff for sampling and whatever, like Timbaland, Darkchild is just like,
oh gosh,
turbo. So
the epitome.
Always like furiously searching on the internet for like the instrumental versions of certain songs.
Yeah.
Or like you have to go and buy the record because that's the only thing with the instrumental, and then record it and then cut it up. Like the only other person out of like I'd say grime would be Iron Soul probably, just because it would be interesting to see him working on something, because
just kind of be a fly on the wall in terms of his processes.
All this stuff, it's just nuts.
I'm not so clued up on like the new age producers that are thriving now.
Yeah.
maybe from like an Afrobeat angle, your Malik Berries, your Jules, Team Salus, but grime, I'd say Da Vinci. Yeah, he's dope. I would have then anyway to be on his level. Do you think that if people can remake your instrumentals, do you think that that's kind of like, I don't know how to put it, because I couldn't recreate a Timbaland or a Pharrell instrumental to perfection, and I think that gives them sort of points. Like if your instrumental's easy to remake, I'm like,
You reckon? I'm not really bothered by that. Like, there's been a couple
imitations,
like really old. No, there's a really old Screw Love tune that essentially was just like a set of drums, and then this like, I think it was a Mariah Carey sample, but like ultra sped up. And it was like this terrible. I found this like terrible YouTube rip, and then I was like looking for the track just like everywhere. I couldn't find it, and I was like, so I was just like, screw this, I'm just gonna remake it. So I just rebuilt it. And
did it get love? Did you put it out?
Yeah. So like, I think stuff like that, it's fine.
It's more like homage, isn't it?
Yeah. You're like, I need that track because it's so good, but it just doesn't exist anywhere. So I think for old stuff like that, it's fine. But then for newer stuff, I guess it's in the same league as like the type beats. So it's like, Kanye type beat,
the Kanye type beat. Yeah.
And then you're just like, okay, cool.
Every day
like,
on YouTube.
But there's these guys that can like whack out like 60 instrumentals. They all sound absolutely on point. And then they can switch up and do another artist completely, and it's just like it's only testing their skill basically. Like, they're just saying like, haha, look how simply I can make this.
I always found the same thing would always, because I don't know if it was maybe because I was maybe one of a few female producers at that time, and I just kept on encountering these conversations about, what program do you use, what audio workstations do you use, and if you use FL Studio, then you're not a real producer. You've got to use Logic Pro, and no one would ever know that I was on FL Studio. And I was just like, I will tell you, the track that you like, I made it on FL Studio, the trial version. Yes, I can't even save that shit. I've always said to people, all of these you could have the biggest studio with so many resources and your track could be absolute shit. It's just the way that you apply yourself to
definitely
your music is important, no matter what tools you use. But certain times things like that happen, you think, oh gosh, I use Reason and that makes me better than you. And it's like, well, use what you do as long as it sounds good.
I think from a listener / DJ's perspective as well, if someone, like, there's been a few times where like really good artists have put up like a beat of some kind that's not what they usually make, and it's like absolutely ridiculous, and you're just like, what the fuck? And then you're like, yo, like, why aren't you making this? Why haven't you finished this? It's like a minute long clip or whatever, and then they're just like, I don't like making it, I made it for a laugh. And you're just like, you what? Like, it was a joke. You can produce this well, and you're just making this for a laugh, but it's still like the most banging tune of this genre that I've heard in like ages.
You're just playing about.
And exactly. And then that's where I get frustrated. I'm like, I wish I could do that. Like, and then just create these like ridiculous tunes in like a couple of hours that these guys do, and they're
just making it for like some people just have this natural gifts.
So I think like that, like having the knowledge of like how to exactly create different sounds and stuff, that's where that would come in handy. But
making, I mean, not to dispute the fact that I think yes, you should master your craft. The one thing that, I'm not using trial versions anymore, but when I was using trial versions, that would force me to do something with the stock sounds because I hated them so much. So that will teach you how to manipulate sound and really make something out of nothing. So it helps really to experiment more, no matter what you're doing. Just make it you. Do you think it's important for like producers to have their own identity? Because you have quite a distinctive sound. I've been told that I have a distinctive sound, but I don't know if that's, I don't know.
I think I just make edits, like that's what I do. Like, but I don't.
But still, you could have like you have more of like there's like a mood
Right. Okay.
Would you say someone could recognize?
I don't know. I think it has to be put out to other people to say that.
Yeah, you can never really judge yourself. I could never really judge myself,
like,
to be honest.
I mean, at the moment, in terms of how I'm trying to steer the kind of R&G stuff,
yeah,
I think that there's a few guys like me, Lems, Invader Spades,
yeah,
and then like there was Qualum as well, he was basically just making like R&B at 140, kind of like slightly cut, but like
I'm gonna do that.
Slightly grimy.
Yeah,
it was
still
just
sweet but dirty.
Yeah, like it's like just on the verge. So it's like listening to like just a smooth instrumental at 140, but with like an MC on top, kind of thing. He was just layering grime acapellas on top, I was like, holy crap, this is like exactly what I want to be making. So that's kind of how I'm trying to move into now, rather than it being as cut up.
I'm weird. Like sometimes I'd listen to a jazz piece and I'd want to take a chunk out of that, you know, that maybe like orchestral solo, and then put that in, you know, on a house, on house drums. I would hear maybe some ballroom Vogue, or you know, or I'd hear like a Missy Elliott lyric and want to chop that up and put that on a ballroom Vogue beat. It's just sort of like I hear certain, like Mike Q. I think is like, he's like a ballroom producer, New York. I love his sound, and he refixes, so it's more like, you know, 130, sassy, repeating loops of R&B tracks, and I'm like, oh, I could do that, but I want to do it the way that he he does it. Okay, I could do it, but I want to do it that way, type of thing. But I think I mean, there was one occasion when my friend was in his car and a machine drum house sort of 90 BPM track came on, and he called me. I was just like, you so could have made this. I've heard this on your laptop. So I've always thought, oh gosh, do I have a certain type of energy to my music? I just wouldn't really know. Until you're the consumer, you wouldn't really know. But I guess we just have things that we aspire to towards.
That's the thing. I think, I don't know. Yeah, I can never look at my stuff and kind of judge it from that listener perspective. Like, obviously, while I'm making it, I'm sitting there like, yeah, that bangs. And then once I'm done with it, I'm like, right, I just kind of like forget about it and let other people
done with you.
Let other people think about it. Like, I think that's what I was doing in the beginning. I was obviously just making like stupid amounts of edits and then throwing out like whole packs to DJs and then going like, oh, what ones are people liking?
You're really good, Tom, because I don't know, I'm such a fusspot. As you said, like, it's taken Felix for me to get back into music properly, because I'd make something and then hate it 24 hours later. And I could have really been like, he's just been on to me like, yeah, you know, okay, we're going to release another EP, but bloody hell, where's the music in between? I'm just like, I don't know, I'm like, I made something and I don't like it anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. I would ask for your advice, like, as soon as I make something, should I just put it out?
Well, I don't
what do
know.
you think?
So I think
I've got a complex, Tom.
I've refined now. So like, I was obviously, when I first started in it, like I listen back to like a few things now. I'm like, wow, that was fucking terrible. Why did I put that? But I think you then get into a kind of flow of knowing what ones are good and what's not.
Yeah. Because you know, like when your shit's hot, like, oh gosh, I brag to myself. I look at myself in the mirror and be like, oh my god, this is a moneymaker.
I think I go by if I've been sitting and I can listen to it on loop for ages.
Yeah, it's a winner.
Then I know it's all right. Yeah. And then I'll put it out. And then I'll forget about it. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm done with that loop now. Like, on to the next one.
It has to be the forget. I need to learn how to forget about it.
Yeah.
I'm just so anal when it comes to, I'd listen to it and then just wear myself out listening to it and then hate it. It's just not productive for me.
Well, in terms of like, if I'm producing a track, like original material takes me so long, it hurts. Like,
but your refixes, I can imagine you pop them off quick.
So yeah, if I'm doing like an edit, basically I'll make like a minute of it straight away. So that's usually I can do that in like an hour or two kind of thing.
It's the other way round for me.
Yeah. So I'll cut it, and if I've got like a minute loop that sounds good, I'm like, right, okay, cool, that's done for a minute. I'll leave it, and then I'll come back and like basically just extend it and make a full track of it.
Yeah.
Rather than sitting there endlessly trying to grind the full tune. Yeah, because otherwise it's like you'll have something that's a really good 16 bar loop or whatever, and then it's like I've got to make a bridge now, but I don't know what to do with it.
Getting to the end.
So as soon as I get that, I'm just like close. I just leave it alone.
I just want to put out the intro and just hope everyone just deals with it.
That's it.
Just loop that on your DJ set, but you don't know what's ever satisfied, is it?
Yeah, you're just like
God.
Yeah. So yeah, then I'll just close it, throw it away, and then I'll come back to it and go, oh yeah, I can just do that. And then it comes in like 30 seconds, and it's like it's better than just.
This is great advice. I'm actually taking notes, Tom, because
excellent. That's good.
Everyone really is on my case. Like, okay, like you can DJ, like now where's the music?
Yeah.
We need more 2018. What does KG sound like in 2018? So yeah, I'm actually gonna steal a couple of your points there.
Do it. Go for it.
Gosh, I need to get over myself, honestly. The guys, Felix and I, we will release I think a second bout of old school material.
Sweet.
Some 2009 shit. Pretty soon, but I don't think that will be until maybe like the top of next year, to be honest. But
cool.
The guys are just sort of helping me out on the DJ front to get my feet out there. But yes, there will be an EP, Tom.
Excellent.
I'm going to make it and throw it away.
Yeah, throw it towards me,
towards you,
and I will take it.
Throw it towards you.
Yes.
So yeah, that's coming out soon. I'm literally mastering a few bits at the moment. So yeah, stay tuned.
Sweet.
Yeah. How about you? Like any up and coming releases, gigs?
I've got self-release of Southside Warriors finally.
You've got my email address, haven't you?
I do.
Yeah, just please give me more.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I've got that, and that's got like a B-side wifey tune that I didn't know what else to do with, so I've just slapped that on there. And then I'm just working on an album at the moment. Like all the instrumentals are done. It's just like R&B edit kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get them all vocaled, so by like different singers and MCs that I think are good. So
yes,
I've got a few of them done, but I'm like trying to get vocals is a very long process.
Oh God, yeah.
So
I did say that people think I'm being a diva for this. It's just like working with artists is a lot.
It is
a lot.
It is.
You know, it's just organizing time and getting them to like what they're doing as well. It's a bit much, but that sounds great. Like, you know where I am. I need the tracks. Another thing as well, I'm just literally taking gems from you because obviously I've just started DJing.
Yeah.
I do want to edge myself out, like out of London. And I mean, what would you suggest? Because I've been like recording mixes and putting them up, but I'm like, is it like, do I need to be more visual in terms of, you know, I put up like a mix of me freestyling with some girls on the decks at Pirate Studios and Instagram. That went really well. And off the back of that, I got a booking. So I don't know, like, how do you push yourself out?
I don't know how I get bookings. I don't know. I've just been doing a lot of radio, I think.
That helps, doesn't it?
I had the radar show for a while.
Yeah.
And then before that, I did a rinse show and stuff like that. And I've just been doing like sets
Stints,
here
isn't
and
it? Have you got
radio.
like a permanent... Oh, you're just guesting?
No. So like I did have like a permanent show, but then obviously that stopped. But before that, I was doing a lot of guesting on other people's shows.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm doing now, yeah.
And then, people just randomly email me out of the blue, like, we'd like to book you. And I was like,
radio does actually help. I've realised that,
I mean, apart from that, I haven't been doing anything differently kind of thing. It's just people have been hitting me up.
On your radar,
so I'm not with like an agency or anything. I just all do it through myself still. So
that's so cool.
Our resident producer Alex speaks to Senscapes about their work merging neuroscience with art.
So why don't you just kind of introduce yourself and everyone who's in the Senscapes collective?
My name's Joe. I guess I'm the musician of the group, so I kind of grab the music. I grab the sound files that Tim and Stephen give to me, and I compose it, arrange it, and write it like you would like a piece of music, but using that data. I also should mention our two colleagues as well who aren't on the mic today, but so Stephen Jurgen and Tim West. And both of them do data analytics and actually hack the data itself and analyze the data and take out sound files for me to use. So
I'm Abby. I'm visual director / creator, the arty one of the group. I develop all the visuals, so the films and the installations basically is I curate the space and the visuals from the data.
Senscapes, I'd say, is kind of like a meld between science, art, and music, and we try and convert brain data directly into kind of artistic output. So whether that be a produced full-length piece of music or converting that into some sort of sound data that can then go into manipulating visuals, that kind of thing. So what we're trying to do is take states of mind from people from neuroscience experiments, specifically like interesting altered states of consciousness, and then seeing how we can directly transfer that data into something that you can connect with on an emotional level. And then maybe through that, you can come a bit closer to maybe what those people were feeling in those altered states.
That's quite a mission statement. And so I guess this was your idea, or?
It was actually kind of a nice mix of all of our ideas, really. We kind of came together last year and we were working on some LSD data, actually, that was part of this other installation at Somerset House by the AXNS Collective. And we were using brain data from people who had taken LSD, and we were seeing what we could do with it. Like some people kind of did other artistic outputs. I took the music, I took the data, and transferred it into like a full-length piece of music with another one of our team members called Stephen Jurgen, and then Abby was along on the same kind of meeting that we were doing, and she got involved because of your work with cymatics, and I'm sure you'll talk about that in more detail in a bit. And then Tim was on another team actually at the time, but obviously he saw the light and decided to come over and work with us afterwards. And it was just a nice serendipitous kind of meeting. And it kind of the music that came out of it and the art that came out of it was so cool. We thought we need to do this a bit more, and we just kind of carried on as it was.
So you guys met this hackathon and you were actually on different teams and sort of you kind of all just amalgamated and were really interested in what each other were doing and continue producing beyond the brief of the hackathon that you initially met under.
Yeah, I feel like from an art perspective, I was always interested in science and neuroscience, and for my final degree show at university, I wanted to work with like science and music and develop that into an art. And then that's when I kind of took on board cymatics, which is like the use of vibrations through sound to make imagery. So I went along to that hackathon that Joe was talking about, kind of with my cymatic machine, and used their sounds to kind of create new visuals. So it was kind of like a good triangle, really, from science, neuroscience, to music, to art.
So Joe's kind of like building up the music and you're like then worrying about the visual track.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of like the end source, bringing it all together. So you've got this musical video or installation that is kind of a development from the data itself. So it's more about creating an overall experience that people can then comprehend who might not necessarily understand a set of data. I mean, like, when I saw the data firsthand, and it was like this raw data that had come from the LSD experiment, and I didn't have a fucking clue. Like, when I saw it, I was like, I don't know what all of this is. And then Tim and Stephen put it into like MetLab, which I didn't know of the time. Like, I'm an art student. Like, fuck knows. So when we went through it, they kind of developed it, and then Joe took it and used those inputs. I'm sure he'll explain a lot better than I will, and from that, then I kind of wanted to translate it in my own way using that data. So it's kind of like we want it to be accessible for everyone, really.
Yeah, I think it's important that, like, it seems to be that you guys don't think the visuals end here and the music starts here. It's all kind of like part of the same thing. And I'll explain. I suppose we should probably talk about an installation that I went to. Was that your first project outside of the hackathon that you kind of like publicly showed?
Yeah, I would say it was the first public Senscapes piece of work that we put out together using the psilocybin data. Joe, if you want to explain about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I could probably explain what went down, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna butcher it or not use the right scientific terminology. So why don't you go a rundown of like vaguely what the itinerary was and what kind of went down, and then maybe we can talk about how you made it.
So basically, we were working with Science Gallery in King's College to kind of do an installation that was going to communicate the psychedelic experience. With my neuroscience hat on, like I work sometimes with Imperial Psychedelic Research Group, and they very kindly gave us the data that they'd recorded from people who had taken psilocybin, which is basically the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. And this was later used in experiments to look at how it might help people with depression, and kind of early results suggest, you know, it might be useful. So we really wanted to look at what is this kind of incredible changing experience it seems to give people. What is this strange new emotional life that people might be able to draw from and move forward after this experience. So we want to communicate that through music and art, but not just any old installation. We wanted to use it from the data itself. So they gave us data which is kind of basically taking the rhythms that your brain makes as it communicates with itself. And you can look at the difference between people who weren't taking psilocybin and were taking psilocybin, and have a look at how those rhythms change. And basically from that, Tim and Stephen analyzed all that data and exported a bunch of sound files. And it sounds quite abrasive.
So here is the kind of like raw noise.
And then what I do with my musician hat on, I kind of took all those sound files and chucked it into a DAW and used granular synthesis to break down those sound files and kind of reform them into some melodies and harmonies and a structure and an arrangement that you might want to listen to on its own. And I tried to keep the musical narrative as close as I could to kind of what people talk about and how people experience this. I gave that to Abby, and Abby developed this beautiful visual array of moving kind of liquids and paints and powders.
Okay, and so were you kind of running the data through a drum skin to make the patterns that you made?
So I used, I was kind of like the end of the source. So Joe created this beautiful long piece of music. And the architecture of it, he explained to me, and like from that, then I took that structure on. So it was like, what was it first?
I mean, it's 30 minutes in total, but it's like 7 or 8 minutes per bit. And it's meant to be just like a segmented part of the psychedelic journey. The first bit's the rest, you know, the bit kind of just when you're starting the experience and you're just trying to mellow out and you're just trying to sink into it as much as you can. You're preparing yourself, right? The second part is called the build. When you kind of start noticing that your internal world's changing a bit, maybe your external world's starting to become a bit strange as well. The third bit is annihilation. That's where everything kind of crescendos, gets quite intense, and you kind of have this real heavy, that's kind of the heaviest experience, I would say, in the psychedelic journey, where you're kind of facing whatever it is that is a real difficulty. And then there's like the fourth bit is afterglow, where you've had this really intense experience. Now you're just being good to yourself afterwards and just kind of chilling out a bit and just trying to process and integrate exactly what's gone on.
Yeah, so I took that explanation just as Joe said, and kind of used cymatics, and my inspiration is Hans Jenny, who coined the term cymatics, and this physics form that it creates through like different waves. So from the sound waves, I kind of looked at different materials which emulated this journey, this kind of psilocybin effect as it went through for the 30 minutes. And from that, I kind of edited it down alongside. But the main thing that I want to get from the visuals is that none of it is rendered or edited. Otherwise, it's not true to its form. So like everything that I've filmed is like real life. It's like it's exactly how it's moving. You've
not pumped up the blues or whatever for some effect.
No, as much as I do love a blue, but I use like certain materials like oils and different materials to kind of create that effect. So it's more about like my material choice, I guess, which is then moves to the exactary medium.
So what material do you evoke the build of the psychedelic experience or annihilation of the psychedelic experience?
Well, I think that's just from researching how, like, the matter of materials, which would get into physics, which I know these guys are very much neuroscience, so...
Yeah, buckle up, listeners.
But it's, like, for the build, for example, I used, like, liquids, like, thin liquids, which had this kind of effect of so you could see what was happening with the brain. From that, it was kind of just like testing out different sounds that Joe gave me, and that was what was exciting, really, because I couldn't even predict what was going to happen, and that's what we were thinking about, doing it live for the installation, but technicalities wouldn't make that possible.
Yeah, there's a live element to it though, that you are literally putting material on a surface and then making that surface vibrate and then hoping it does the thing that you like visually or aesthetically are kind of looking for. There is that element of throwing caution into the wind, I guess.
Yeah, and some parts were just still because the frequencies were too high, but I wanted to keep those in because it shows the brain and how the mind may be working in that way, and that's what kind of links the science to the music to the art, I guess. So those moments of stillness kind of create that empathy within what's happening in the brain, maybe.
And then what we wanted to do is kind of put people in the middle of that. We wanted to put people in the middle of something that was completely immersive in terms of its audio design, in terms of the soundscape that we were creating. And we wanted to do the same thing with the visuals as well. So people were sitting in the middle of this all-encompassing experience that tried to mimic that same emotional journey that someone might have gone through while taking psilocybin, using the data itself. And, we wanted to follow the narrative really closely from what people had gone through in the experiment. So when the data changed, the music would change. And also we wanted to create a narrative with the music on top of that mimicked that experience that you might go through. So it's not just something that you're looking at cold, hard data and seeing how it changes. You're getting that emotional packet with it as well, and it's kind of trying to induce this feeling of going on a journey somewhere and maybe coming out of it a little bit different.
Yeah, and there was a panel talk at the end, actually with someone who was in the initial psilocybin experiment that you kind of took the data from, and you guys did a really good job, I think, of emulating that experience, because he was talking about things like surrender and kind of giving yourself over. And I sat in the middle of your installation, an audio and visual track that you were just kind of letting wash over you. And I found the stereo imaging really interesting. This guy from the experiment spoke about just how sensitive you are to like sound, where it's coming from, and what you'd done with panning sound around within this kind of sphere that we're all sitting with, projectors on all sides, was like quite evocative of then what an actual patient from the experiment said he felt. So I'd say you could definitely tick that box off as a job well done.
Yeah, I think it was a genuine, that might have been kind of the cherry on the cake for us to hear Ian, who won't mind me using his name because he's quite public about this, but he talked about his experience, and honestly having him say afterwards that like that was something he could really connect to was really flattering. Like it genuinely was like probably the most flattering bit out of all of it, really.
And he said like he was still thinking about the psilocybin experience 6 months later in a positive way, and how that was still benefiting like how he dealt with his depression 6 months on, which I found profoundly interesting when you think about how short-lived some medications are, but like one hit of this and then like a pretty intense.
Especially like that's his feeling, but also it showed that in the EEG data, which is just like it's proof of it then. And that's what I feel like in modern day society, people need that kind of proof almost to kind of, rather than it be a concept. And that's why the science and art come so close to each other.
But do you think there's like a gap? Like, do you think you guys could never make a piece of art that fully makes someone go, oh, I can understand what experiencing psilocybin or LSD is like without taking it? Like, there's always going to be that gap that you can't surpass, do you think? Or do you think potentially as technology gets further, we'll get to a place where you could actually like emulate the experience itself?
I think, I think the whole point of what we're trying to communicate here a little bit is that the experience of change can come from lots of different areas. It doesn't have to be psilocybin,
It's about states.
Exactly. It's about this state of kind of transformation and growth and just being in the moment and really enjoying that experience where you are. And I think you can get that from lots of different things. You can get that from like exercise or meditation or hanging out with your mates or like writing music or making art. And I think we're trying to show the commonality among all these experiences that some people on psilocybin have really quite strongly because it's almost forced upon them by the drug, but we can induce that same experience with an audio visual installation, or that's what we try and hope for.
Also, just to add, would be that we want to start that conversation. So we don't necessarily say whether to take psilocybin because it's going to make you, it's going to change your state of mind. But it's more about, that's why we had the installation, which was just over 30 minutes long, and then followed by the panel talk. Because it's quite important to see that it's not just a drug. We just want to start a conversation, whether it's positive or negative.
One thing that I found so interesting from the panel talk afterwards, which had Ian, one of the guys from the psilocybin experiment, and various neuroscientists from Oxford and King's College, I believe. And there was some like top percentile people there, and he did a very good job at like fielding some really good questions for them in this panel. But what came up for me is that the amount of music analogies littered through neuroscientists basically just trying to boil down the quite complex concepts about brain waves and how the brain works, which is like an organ that we don't fully understand yet, and how readily sort of musical vocabulary came to their minds to describe this stuff. So there was a great bit where a professor from Oxford spoke about how psychedelic experienced brain, sort of their brain waves and harmonic frequencies when they're like different parts of the brain are speaking to each other could be termed like a standard 8-bar kind of rock song, whereas when you're like on a psychedelic experience, that range of like almost like a scale range becomes more like free jazz than a kind of like quite formulaic song. And I found that quite interesting. The guy from the experiment also spoke about the importance of music and how if the song wasn't perfect for his mood at the time, then he could feel a bit crapper than he did a couple of minutes ago. And I wondered why you think music is so ready and like ripe for the picking to like transfer over to talking about psychedelics for people that don't really understand.
Yeah, so there's actually some really interesting work that Imperial College group do. Mendel Kaelen is a really interesting researcher. He did a lot of stuff looking at kind of the music and how different aspects of music might affect you differently when you're on psilocybin or on a psychedelic, for example. So Sela Natassoy, the professor you were just talking about before at Oxford, she has a really interesting way of looking at neural patterns, which basically, as you were saying, and actually really well described, kind of look at the way, kind of the patterns that your brain makes when it's talking to itself. And I think the reason why it's such an easy analogy to make with music is because we kind of experience implicitly the same feelings in music as we do when we look at data in the brain. Like we look at data in the brain and we can see that it's sometimes quite rigid and efficient and logical, like it's straightforward. You can see there's not a lot of activity going on. And then you give someone something like psilocybin and suddenly everything becomes a bit more chaotic and a little bit more unhinged. And I'm saying this to you and we're not looking at any brain scans, but because you can kind of almost relate that to different kinds of music, you know implicitly what that might be like. You know, we all know what a rock song sounds like. It's very, it can be very progressive. It can be very 4/4 beat. It can be very standard. You kind of know what's coming next, and that's nice sometimes. But then you've got like freeform jazz, which we all know how much crazier that can be compared to a 4/4 rock song, right? Like that's all over the place. It changes all the time. Things happen, and it's hard to kind of grasp. So I think the reason why the brain data is so analogous to music is because it connects that rational, logical form of data with something that we already implicitly know by listening to things in our day-to-day life, like music, that shares that.
You're right. You definitely empathize, and I suppose even at a more granular, boiled down level, music is built up by blocks of waves, and our brain is literally, your one segment of the brain is literally talking to each other in very similar waves. Okay, you might understand them or comprehend them in a different way, but like we're talking about, the foundational building block is a wave, and how that, and then you go to music and you look at synthesizers that are sine waves or square waves or triangle waves, and then like there's actually all that language already in neuroscience, but these two groups don't really meet or exchange much like crib notes, but actually there's like massive overlap between the two of them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at EEG data, which is basically collecting all the electrical output that your brain makes when it's talking to itself, and you do just see these sine waves, and it's amazing. And that's exactly the kind of reason that we can transform it into music, is because it does share that same building block, which is just a sine wave. And you can look at a sine wave on a screen and see how that changes, or you can listen to it in the air, and either way it opens up really interesting possibilities for artistic like design around this kind of data. And to be honest, like in my early 20s I was just producing really, so it was like I'm just trying to find a way to shoehorn music in all the time to my neuroscience job. So in a way it's kind of a perfect opportunity to do so.
And so what do you guys think, like obviously part of what you guys are trying to do is to change perceptions? In the panel talk, one of the professors spoke about sort of cannabis, and how cannabis is probably the nearest example to psychedelics in terms of like barriers being overcome. And if you look at how like opinions have changed about marijuana and its medicinal use between the 80s and now, it's like the kind of curve in acceptability has just like massively scaled up through the roof, and kind of like potentially that curve's about to happen with psychedelics. And I wonder what you think your part or the part of other art is in shaping that conversation or changing how we feel about what we think of when we hear the word psychedelics.
From an art perspective, obviously it's seen as a lot less taboo. In the past, like people have took psychedelics in music and in art to create new pieces of artwork. I mean, like the Beatles, all of these different names that took it just to create something new and something fascinating, really. But for us, I think we wanted to start a conversation, and there's a lot of new research in that, and from us to get that and create an experience, and to people to then just talk about it. I mean, my mum and dad came to the show, and I don't think they really knew that it was going to be about magic mushrooms. And my dad was like, "Oh yeah, bloody hell, yeah, that was really good."
They're quite a traditional northern family, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they're just, yeah. For someone like my mum, she would never usually sit through something like that, and you have to. Well, you don't have to sit in it, but you experience this like immersive visualization soundscape, and then you come out and to have a talk about it after. And like you said before, these neuroscientists who are very, I don't know, well educated, and they're fascinated by it for a different reason. So I think there's definitely, for them to have so much research in it, there's definitely more to come from it. And I just don't think there should be a taboo around it. I mean, recreationally, do what you want, but...
Well, I think your mum's an interesting example of probably exactly the kind of people that you want to go to these kind of things and go, oh, before I came to this, I literally thought that if you took something like this, a dragon's going to like, you know, things are going to appear in your vision that aren't there, and it's going to be like a 70s movie, like tripping out scene. But you know, then someone like that goes to that and goes, oh right, I've like completely misjudged this for like all these years because culture has told me this is what it's like.
Well, exactly,
and it's like not that true.
I mean, if it was just the immersive experience for my mum, maybe she'd have just thought like I'd take shitloads of acid every weekend. But to have that discussion after and then have this kind of, not proof, but there is people researching it. I think the scientific research definitely helps have that, like, I don't know, that kind of
like academic rigor.
Yeah, and I do think that helps, and that's why science and art combining is so interesting, because they both kind of have that social output, whether it be through music, art, or a scientific research paper.
Do you think there's like a confirmation bias in the, you know, the event that I went to that you guys put on, or future events you might do, the kind of people who are going to seek out that event or want to learn more are already going to be won over about, but like, the taboos that we're talking about and overcoming those stereotypes, whereas actually you want to broadly reach to people who absorb things from culture that are slight mistruths, I guess.
100%. And actually this is kind of a good commentary on the research as well that's going into it, because you know, if you're telling people that this is something that you're going to do and they're expecting it to be something quite intense and strange, they're going to be led by that. They're going to be led by all those expectations. And you might actually be getting people going along to these events and the research experiments that might already kind of be won over and already convinced of the fact that this is being talked about so much as being like such an amazing thing. And I really think that what we're trying to do is also make it a bit more of a sober way of thinking about this field of consciousness, because it's certainly like quite a transformative experience for some people. But like, as we were saying earlier, like you can get that from loads of other things. You can get loads of transformative experience from other things, right? It just happens to be quite an interesting one. But you want to reach people that aren't convinced by the evidence, or you want to reach people who have completely the wrong perception about what it is, or even might benefit from it, or other things that give the same experience, right? I think the people that came along there quite naturally were people that are interested in it. I think the more that we can get this out there for people that aren't necessarily straight up, but you're going to get that with anything, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I think you're going to get like you got your audience, right? And your audience is going to grow a bit, but the idea is you want to break out of that, and I suppose that's a hard slog.
Yeah, and shut me up if I can't talk about this yet, but you guys were in talks with the V&A before, so like, you know, you get into bigger venues, bigger rooms, bigger runs, more people see it than just like a one-off event.
Yeah, so that V&A thing isn't necessarily confirmed yet. It's okay.
We'll cut this out then.
No, it's okay. We can talk about it. We're working next with a researcher in King's called Elena Antonova. She's an expert in brain data and meditation. So what we're going to do is create an installation that you can kind of come in and out of. That's going to try and give you in the same way the meditation experience as we did with psilocybin. We now want to do it with meditation and kind of be like, this is something that we can transmit, and hopefully you can have a small window where you can experience that, take on board maybe what the message is, and come away with something a bit new.
So this is exactly what you're saying about you guys not being like pegged to, we are dealing explicitly with psychedelics and the brain. It's about states, be it, how music makes you feel, how meditation makes you feel, how psilocybin makes you feel. You're not like pegged to, we are just going to talk about LSD.
No, we just want to, I mean, because we're all from different fields that cross over in various ways, I think it's more about what comes our way and data that we find exciting and want to develop on, really. And that will, like, because the data is always the first source. It's whatever comes after that. Like, for this, I wanted it to be, well, we all wanted it to be an immersive experience, and that's why I chose to have the projectors like 360, and then with the sound completely 360 around it, surround, like, and I think that was like pivotal, really, to show people the data properly, and that was just one example of it. I mean, I feel like we have many more experiments. Some may work, some may not. But I think we're just open to any kind of data that comes our way.
I think maybe as well on like kind of more of a selfish level, like we've been talking about how much we want to communicate science, and that's obviously very important to us. But also we have a lot of fun like just messing around with brain data, right? And like
we met at a hackathon.
Yeah. You know,
it's going to get nerdy sometime.
Yeah.
And like, you know, as you know, purely from a selfish point of view, as far as I'm aware, I don't think anyone's really trying to make full-length pieces of music literally using brain data from people who've been in interesting experiences, right? So, and I don't think anyone's doing the same thing with art, as far as I'm aware, or as far as you're aware.
We're very unique.
Well, I was going to ask you about this because it is extremely new territory. Have you guys really got anyone to like look up to whose work you love, or is there really anyone to sense check this, or is it basically like, right, this is new and I can't really turn to him and go, is this right? Because there's no wrong or right answer. This is like stuff that no one's ever really covered before.
So I think in terms of the method of how we make it, that's new. So there's people that definitely take brain data already and try and sonify it, but we don't tend to really do anything artistic with it. Like, it's sonified and you can sit there and listen to it and it changes, and like that's really interesting to see how it changes, but no one's really turned it into like a John Hopkins piece, right? Like I love, for example, John Hopkins' work, and I wanted to, and when I listen to his work and when I listen to people like Brian Eno, or when I listen to like even people like Kiasmos or something like that, I get like a super strong experience of just being able to be in that moment, really enjoy the music, I completely sink in on myself. And it's kind of, that for me is similar to the psychedelic experience, and it's about trying to take that artistic side of how you feel and blend it with that interesting methodology of using data. So I think it has to have really strong art and science connection for it to really communicate what we're trying to do in an authentic way. And I think, as far as I know, we're the only people doing this, using this methodology, making this kind of music.
We get inspiration from different things, like Joe just said, about like Brian Eno. I think I get influences from like installation artists and colouring and like different artists like Oliver Ellison.
Colouring?
Like colour palettes and how...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Like colouring books?
Oh, yeah. And how like they work with space and light to create certain atmospheres. Like that one at the Tate, the sun, which is kind of creates this environment. And it makes people feel a certain way. And I think there's a lot of art which has that effect. And there's a lot of soundtracks and music that has that effect also. So it's just kind of adding them with actual data, which is what is exciting, really. And I think someone that does have a neuroscience degree is Floating Points.
Oh yeah, he's a
bloody genius. I fucking love his work.
Caribou's a mathematician as well.
Yeah, I love these people. Like they have like secret past lives of nerdiness, and which is great. And but he did a visual album, Floating Points. Well, he did like a visualization like around neuroscience, and that was really exciting. I think there's people are playing with it. It just needs to be kind of more brought out of the surface.
And for anyone who's like listening to this right now, because I know, you know, if it wasn't for me personally knowing you, Abby, outside of work, creative work, I wouldn't have been able to probably find any of this stuff. So for anyone who is like really interested in what you guys are talking about, is there anyone good to look up on YouTube or books or events that you suggest in London? For anyone who's like, shit, I need to find out more about this.
About us?
About you guys, about this kind of area of like neuroscience and art. Is that like, you know, the hackathon you guys met at or anything like that? Any tips you'd be giving to someone who's like, wow, I need to learn more like now?
Yeah, I mean, for us, you could go to www.senscapes.com. We recorded the night Harmonics of Mind. So that will be coming out in the foreseeable future, which will be cool because you get to kind of see a bit of the reactions of people inside the installation, and then also hear a bit more in detail about what you were talking about before.
And then at some point soon, we're going to be releasing The Journey, which is like the full-length piece of music, and we're looking kind of somewhere for that to be that's just a bit more important than just kind of putting it out there. So we're looking for somewhere to put that on, but that'll come out at some point. I'd say that if you do want to look at kind of the more sciencey stuff of things, Mendel Kalin's done some really interesting stuff on music and psychedelics. Selen Atasoy, she's a professor from Oxford. She did the harmonic stuff in the brain. Chris Timmerman's doing some really cool stuff at Imperial with DMT. I really kind of want to grab his data at some point and do some sort of DMT tune or something. That'd be super cool. I think they're good people to start with if you actually are interested in the science of what's going on. As Abby was saying, like, it's interesting to actually have scientific evidence to kind of suggest that like this experience might be really useful for people. Like you were saying before as well, like people might already be really into it, and so therefore it might work for them. I think it's just about finding what works for you to help develop that kind of transformation in yourself, or try and overcome something that might be quite difficult. I think it doesn't have to be psilocybin, but clearly for the people that are in this study, it was useful for them.
Finally, Akito's in the studio to run us through some songs which inform his current style or future direction. This is Akito's track Envy.
Right, so Akito, would you like to tell us the first track that you brought down for us?
The first track is Andy Stott's Violence from his Modern Love record label.
So is this one that you'd really love to produce, or you just been feeling like, I don't know, like, is this one that's regularly played in your personal playlist, or?
I play a lot at home. I first come to like hear the track because we were in Berlin doing a radio show, and my mate was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see Andy Stott at Berkheim. It's a Modern Love night," and I didn't have a clue at all who Andy Stott was or Modern Love, and then it's like doing my research afterwards, and then listening to a shitload of his music on YouTube, and then that song really stood out to me, and since then I've been listening to it loads. I guess it's like perfect come down music.
When I listened to it, I felt you would probably be drawn towards those sort of dark, over distorted tones nearer the end, contrasting to the soft vocals at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. It was definitely the part past the intro that really got me. Like those overdriven sort of drums with the vocal. For me, like the vocal never really fit the rest of the track.
Yeah,
and that was the part I was least into, but it's still obviously there and plays its part in the whole track. And it's definitely the distorted synth that comes in later on in the track as well. That's the bit I was most drawn to.
I'm not a producer myself. Is that sort of difficult to sort of get within? I don't know, like if you're just a software producer, or if you're.
I've never been able to achieve a sound like that. But then again, I haven't really tried that hard. So possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd guess so. And I'm assuming, well, I've been told anyway that most of his stuff is built on hardware and stuff like that.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds so. Yeah, because my distortion plugins do not sound like that. So I'm definitely drawn towards the warmth and everything that you can hear within his choice of samples and processing.
Near the end of that track, it's similar. Like the drums come through really strong. Kind of leads us on to the next track, which is Dave Kelly, Bookshelf Rhythm. So it's obviously along the dancehall vibes, and I know you've sort of dabbled in that yourself, like with your edits of like Sizzler and other sort of tracks, which are bangers, to be honest.
Thank you, bro.
I was just wondering, is that why you sort of picked it? Like, do you want to kind of delve into that, or maybe get some original productions on that sort of vibe?
With the EP I released, Pleasure Pending, and I think it was like around 2016. There was like a dancehall tune off that, and that was a direct influence off Bookshelf Rhythm.
Yeah.
And then in my album as well, there's like 3 or 4 sort of 100 BPM dancehall things, and they're directly influenced off that as well. As I've always wanted to make dancehall or sort of dancehall tinge sort of music, but never had the confidence to. So it's only sort of more recently where I've been like dabbling in it in those sort of speeds, and then taking the direct influence from that and then trying to develop it into my own sort of sound.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of producers kind of, if they're not making it, they're definitely DJing the more 100 BPM style music at the moment. I don't know, have you seen that in the clubs, like if you've been DJing out?
Yeah, loads. I haven't personally been playing it myself because I don't like the speed in the club. It's a bit too slow for me. I'm just like, I got 130 tunnel vision for life. Like, and if that changes, fair enough, it changes. I will flirt and I will dabble in it in terms of production for other people to play or myself to listen to, maybe.
Like, I've been in the clubs early, like 18, and that's kind of the one that was filling the floors. Like,
yeah.
In a commercial, like not underground, but like in a commercial sort of club, like dancehall stuff was still maybe pop dancehall.
I guess that's how I started DJing anyway, because I was playing a lot of like dancehall, R&B and stuff. This is when I was in secondary school, when I first touched deck, like my initiation like into the DJ world. And I was playing a lot of R&B, hip hop, dancehall before I'd ever sort of gone off on a tangent in terms of electronic music. And this is one of the rhythms that I guess had the biggest impact on me.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep referring back to it.
Why do you think you're sort of drawn to the dance? Or is it drum patterns? Is it the groove? I
think it's danceability. For me, like, in terms of what I do, DJing and production-wise, is functional.
Yeah.
So I always want it to be able to play it in a club and people will dance to it.
That's the aim, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be like, oh, like I'm edgy as fuck. Like, hey, look at me. Like, I'm gonna put this kick pattern off so you break your leg when you try and dance. Like, that's not my style. Like, I'm very, you could say formulaic in a sense. I want to make it interesting, but the be all end all is that it's danceable and functional. Someone can play it. You might get a wheel up if you're lucky. Like, good times.
For those first two tracks, I think they're kind of loosely tied to what you've been producing. But the next one, Frank Ocean, Chanel.
Need both sides of the 12, need both sides of the L. Free smoke rings in they hell. Sleet snow grind for the well. Whole team diamonds is real. Show them how to shine by themselves. You need a cosign for your help. I need that bitch to grind on my belt. I know you need to try for my belt.
When I got the list, I was like, wow, like, what do you get from that?
I'm just obsessed with Frank Ocean, I think. Like, in terms, I wish I could sing, that's one thing. And if I could sing, then I'd probably sound like Frank Ocean. If that's humanly possible. Like,
well, we've got a mic in the...
Nah, but I can't sing. I've tried auto-tune and it doesn't work for me. Like, I've tried many a times and failed. But that's where I think my obsession lies in terms of just like the content, in terms of his lyrics and beat selection and execution.
Yeah.
For me, it's like perfect listening music.
The one thing from that I found was the track itself is quite minimal in terms of production.
Yeah.
So you're just focusing purely on the vocal side of things.
It's a relationship between both of them.
Yeah.
I like really simple stuff. I've only started to take that on my own productions more recently, where I try and strip things back.
Yeah.
Whereas before I was trying to lay everything up, like a kick drum with 4 kicks, percussion sound with 6, like unnecessarily.
Just thump on
yeah,
it.
but then it doesn't really have that impact. So I guess what I take from Frank Ocean and like similar sort of artists, from their production to like structurally how they have their music, is simplifying stuff and having more impact rather than layering everything up and then softening the actual outcome.
I think that's kind of echoed on your next track as well, where we head into the classic of Liberty Sound boss, Perilous Roll with the Punctures.
Nice.
That track's 11 years old now, and I assume like I still hear loads of DJs playing that loads. I would play it myself. It fits in a set. Like, is that one you still kind of drawn to a lot?
I played it at the Novus Horizon Warehouse party and I mixed it so badly. Like, I clanged it so hard.
Mate, I'm telling you now, it does not mix. Like, it's so fucking hard.
It's very difficult
to mix in.
It's very difficult to mix. I guess that's why I listen to it more than play it. So I listen to it at home, but I don't tend to play it out because I can't mix it. I clang really badly, and the CDJ wasn't working that well as well. So I just had an awful time and sort of
blaming the tools. Yeah,
yeah, of course I did. Yeah, I turned around from the crowd, and I just like started screaming. Everyone was like, "Are you alright?" I'm like, just having a moment.
Is there any sort of like standout bits, because the track is quite long? Is there any? What else kind of draws you into that track?
There's a section in the middle where that square wave comes in, and it's beautiful. That's my favourite part. The rest of it I really fucking like, but that part is the part for me. It's where, as soon as that other synth comes in, I'm like, ooh,
yeah,
that's that moment.
Over that, like the bass and
it's a beautiful moment.
No, I was gonna say, like, I don't know, have you heard the Drake spitting raps over it?
I heard. Oh, in fact, I saw a video of him running alongside the car.
That's the only one that's come out.
Yeah. I've seen it, but I haven't actually heard the track.
No,
by
it
itself.
plays in the background, doesn't it? Yeah,
exactly.
It's not been released or nothing, but
doing gains, innit, mate? Muscles.
One thing I was going to say, like, from that is, like, what's your thoughts on, like, because there's been other examples of people jumping on underground sort of tracks.
Oh, like Mallow, for instance.
Yeah. Like, do you think that's good? Like, that someone in that sort of limelight is bringing.
I think it's positive for the artist, definitely, in a sense that there's this whole demographic that aren't familiar with this person's music. So it's just shining a light on it. And as music goes, like, you're either going to embrace it or you're not, aren't you?
Yeah.
So it gives people the opportunity, it gives people choice. So I'm fully into that.
The next track is Scissor Babylon.
Was it worth it? Would you do it again? Aren't you tired?
I don't think from the tracks I've heard from you that you've worked with many vocalists. So I was wondering if that's why you included this, is to sort of, again, with the Frank Ocean, like leading back to the Frank Ocean one with the vocals. Is that an aim, or? I
would love to work with vocalists. It's just, I'm not the greatest person at collaboration. So for me, it's quite difficult. I'd rather get a piece of music that's already been made and then make an edit of it, providing I'm feeling it, sort of thing. It has to be that sort of vibe. And that's why I'm so drawn towards like R&B and hip hop, because I can see it as a piece of music and embrace it, rather than being like, oh, I'm working with someone and I don't like it. And then what am I going to tell them? Like, this is shit. It's not good for them. And it's definitely like, it's going to spoil our relationship, isn't it? So I think that's why I've kept a distance with working with artists, but it's something I definitely want to do in the future.
Yeah. I feel like, you have to have a proper special relationship with an artist so that you can give them that criticism when you're in the studio. And they obviously have to be taking it on board and respect your sort of opinion on that. Is there anything else that you sort of took from that track, like beat-wise?
I like the beat. It's pretty simple. It's just the relationship between the two. Okay. That really got me.
Yeah.
I really like when all the elements really like sort of in terms of working really well together to create this final thing that's really strong.
Yeah. I guess it's a similar vibe towards the Frank Ocean.
Exactly.
Essentially, vocals just fit perfectly with a beat.
Nothing overpowering each other. It's like a perfect balance.
Yeah. And then the final one, I don't know if you want to, do you want to introduce your final track?
The final track is by Taiko Onuki, who's a Japanese singer-songwriter. It's the second track off her album Sun Shower, which came out in 1977.
So when I saw that, I was like, is this one you've sort of grown up with? I know you've got roots to Japan and your Asian roots. Like, is this one you just sort of grew up listening to, or is that why you picked it? Or
I've only like heard it recently, to be frank.
So that theory's out the window.
Yeah, the theory is out the window. Like, the genre city pop, I've only become familiar with it within the last 3 months or so. So I've just been like scouring the internet, trying to find everything I can. Just going through YouTube, flicking through tracks, and this one really stood out to me. In terms of vocals as well, that would be like the perfect sort of artist I would want to work with in the future, trying to make clubby sort of vocal tracks. This is the sort of tone I'd want to sort of hit. I think that's why I'm so attracted to it.
I mean, one thing I took from it was, it's like you said, sweet. I thought like it's the very happy sort of vibe. I was like, you don't really hear that in like a club or anything. Like, it's always quite, I want to be as gritty as possible or whatever. Like, so if you took that sort of vibe, I think it'd be very different from stuff that's out there at the moment.
Definitely. I would definitely want to try and achieve that as well. in terms of my Japanese knowledge, and that is very shit. So I'm only learning more and more Japanese now, or slowly. So I don't understand all the lyrics.
Yeah.
So I'm just listening to it for its tonality and delivery, and then thinking about the lyrics afterwards. I guess that's why I'm so judgmental towards English music. It's because I'm listening to the lyrics and not the like other percentage of it.
Yeah, so what aspects about that track do you kind of drawn towards or wish you'd been able to capture?
For me, it's like the balance between the percussion and the vocals, and just bringing the whole track together as a whole.
Yeah.
And that's something I haven't achieved yet, I feel, in terms of what I've been making over the last few years. So that's definitely something I want to strive towards. And that's one of the tracks that inspires me to want to work with artists and start collaborating more.
That's it for this episode of Integrate. Thank you for listening. A massive thanks to NTS Radio for the studio time. Out to Scratcher DVA, Lloyd SB and Nervous Horizon for letting us use their music. And of course, Akito, Senscapes, KG and Gundam for being involved. Episode 2 is already in the works. We'll be chatting to Aisha Devi, Air Max 97, Dead Boy and India Jordan. Keep your ear to the ground for that one and hit the follow button on whatever platform you're listening from. In the meantime, head to weareinsert.com.